So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. We're in Zazenkai today, sitting for the day. I think maybe 18 months ago, I gave a talk on the 8 winds of the world. And given that the winds keep blowing, it would be good to give a talk about it again today. So this teaching comes from one of the early suttas, Lokavapati Sutta. And there's different translations, but the 8 winds, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, success and failure, and praise and blame. Well, sometimes I kind of like fame and disgrace is another one of the translations. And if you look at the 8, they kind of start off very simple, very basic, pleasure and pain, and get a little more kind of conceptually complicated as they go along. And the Buddhist teaching is that wise, worthy people are not buffeted around by these 8 winds of the world. Not only are they not buffeted around, blown about by what we think of as unpleasant or negative events, but they're also not buffeted and blown about or as affected by what we think of as positive events. The very first pair, pleasure and pain, it's really worth contemplating just when you have time. Just take the time to really contemplate the absolute inevitability of pleasure and pain. Just to be a sentient being in any form, just a sentient being will have its version of pleasure and pain. The sort of more complex the neurology and brain structures, the more intense the experience of pleasure and pain. And maybe it could sound a bit depressing, that there's pleasure and pain undulating through our day, every single day of our whole life. I think I could see how that could sound a bit depressing, but it's only depressing if we resist it, or only depressing if we think we can't manage it. But if we can just see it in a dispassionate way, this rolling along throughout the day of pleasure and pain, we can sort of trust ourselves and our practice that there is a way to live with pleasure and pain without it being too disruptive. And there's nothing depressing about it at all. Of course, as we all know from the teachings, it's deeply liberating. We just think of a newborn baby right from the start. It's born and it needs comfort instantly. It cries and it needs comfort. It wants warm milk. It wants to be against a warm body. And then it feels pleasure. Then it's calm and it feels pleasure. And then just a short time after that, its tummy starts to be a little uncomfortable and it maybe starts to cry. It needs to be bobbed up and down a little bit, or patted, walked back and forth, rocked till its tummy settles down and it can do its toileting things, and then it's at peace again. And then it's tired and it cries. We bundle it up and lay it down, and that's so much better, and it goes to sleep. And it wakes up, it's hungry again. And it just moves like that. With a baby, it's very rapid, which is why parents get so exhausted. Pleasure, pain, just very rapid shifting. Every half hour, or whatever it might be. And then as the child gets older, the space between these acute periods of pleasure and pain, just generally speaking, lengthen. It's a little less tiring for parents. A baby cries when it's cold, whereas a 3-year-old can go up and say, I'm cold, I need my jacket. And a 5-year-old can just simply go and get their jacket. So the cycle of pleasure and pain tends to widen over time and become less intense over time for us as just animals. And I think something that's worth contemplating also, besides just the mere fact of pleasure and pain, is how each of us, depending on how we're raised, develops a different relationship to it. Some people, if they're fortunate, their caregivers respond very well and very appropriately in a timely fashion to their pains. And other caregivers don't always do that. So each of us, over the years of our life, it's not really a level playing field. Some of us can manage pleasure and pain a little better than others. So we can always be compassionate to ourselves and to others when we see ourselves or others not navigating pleasure and pain terribly well. So that in itself, I think, just to think about the inevitability of pleasure and pain in really slowly, steadily, look at it in your own life, from the waking up in the morning, from the very first moment of waking up. We go through a few cycles, fairly mild cycles generally. We need to use the restroom, maybe brush our teeth, might feel a bit furry, have some breakfast, maybe some stress about getting somewhere. And between each of those stresses, we usually find a way to feel some comfort and some pleasure. And we move through our day that way. And as practitioners, what our job is, if you want to put it that way, is we want to be able to work with pleasure and pain in such a way that it's not disturbing, it doesn't disturb our minds too much. Because if our minds are disturbed, we can't be fulfilling our vow, our bodhisattva vow to be of being benefit to the world. So we want to navigate our own pleasure and pain in a way that's as steady as possible. Steadily. One of the main ways that the teachings describe the way to manage it is to contemplate that pleasure and pain are both impermanent. They're both transient. They arise, but they do not stay. Pleasures don't last, and pain doesn't last. It's there for a period of time, but it passes. Pleasure and pain is always passing. It arrives and passes. And we can amplify the pleasure and pain with our mind, or we can kind of de-amplify it. We don't need to amplify it. Many of us suffer mostly through the amplification of our thoughts around both pleasure and pain. Because of course, the difficulty with amplifying pleasure is then it passes and then one feels pain because it passed. So we don't want to amplify the pleasure too much either. It's nice to have a meal. It's very nice. We don't have to get ecstatic about it. Just enjoy our meal. Don't have to make a big drama out of how amazing it is, or how amazing anything is. Just appreciate, a kind of a gentle appreciation, gentle appreciation. So it's not bland. No one's suggesting, the Buddha's not suggesting that we have a bland way of navigating the world. Just a calm and steady mind appreciates the pleasures and manages the pains, knowing that they will shift and change. So not to determine our state of mind by these externalities, these conditioned phenomena are always going to shift and change. So we don't want our mental peace to be dependent upon them. So then the next pair are gain and loss, gain and loss. And it says in the sutta, and it repeats this for all of them, gain has arisen in me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. Gain has arisen for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. Even just the way it says that gain has arisen for me, it's got a nice sense of not being terribly personal. It's just sort of arisen. It's just arrived. Loss has arrived for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. I think it can be a little bit hard sometimes to see that gain is stressful, but it is stressful if we want to hold on to it. If we hold on to gain, it becomes stressful pretty quickly. So we can just appreciate gain when it happens. The gain is there. Well, that's nice. That's nice. And just not be dependent upon that gain for our state of mind. The gain is there. We can enjoy it. We don't need to amplify it. And we can, if we even want to, which I find I do quite a lot, I notice the gain and I remind myself that this gain is inconstant and that I might lose it, that I will lose it. It will definitely change. The gain will change. It's good to remind ourselves of that. Sometimes the gains and losses are just very little things. You know, we might, I don't know, can't think of a simple little gain. Some little gain. I can think of simple little losses like losing car keys, or, well, a gain might be you're heading somewhere, you're running late, and the light stays green. Yay! You get to go through. You're not going to be as late as you thought you would be. Little gains like that. We have little gains and little losses. So we can, as practitioners, notice those little gains and losses, just the tiny little ones that happen across the day, and practice remaining steady with them. A little bit happy with the gains, I'm a little bit disappointed with the losses. See if we can keep it steady like that. Not too upset, not too pleased. And the more we can practice that with the little ones, then when the medium-sized ones come along, we do a better job with the medium-sized ones when they come along. Maybe a bigger gain might be getting a good job, and a loss might be losing a job that you liked, getting into a university, or getting a failing grade. These are the sort of more medium-sized ones, and most of us have some of them, a number of times across a year, or I would imagine we have very variations of these sorts of things. And it's not that they're not painful or not pleasurable, but again, it's just this practicing of being steady with it, reminding ourselves it's just temporary. It's a temporary thing. And of course, then every now and then we get really, maybe really big gains. Sometimes people will win major awards or something, some windfall of some sort. But almost all of us get some major losses at some point. Losing people that we love would be probably the most obvious one. We lose people we love. Losing relationships can be an extremely painful thing for people. Losing relationships can be just as painful, nearly as painful, or more painful than losing someone who passes away. And when we have these really big losses, they are very painful. And I don't think the Buddha was in any time expecting us to not cry or not become really quite saddened and maybe even traumatized by some of these major losses. But we can still navigate them in a way that we recover. We recover more fully and don't maybe sink quite so deeply into despair or pain of loss. We can still feel. So relaxing with the little gains, relaxing with the little losses, navigating more skillfully the sort of moderate gains and the moderate losses. So when the big ones come, we're going to more skillfully navigate them as well. For our own sake and for the sake of everybody around us. So the next couplet is success and failure. So getting a little more kind of conceptually complex, success and failure. Success has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. I think success is quite stressful in many ways. Success is stressful. When we have success, then there's a kind of expectation, a standard that both we and others expect us to maintain. Success can be quite stressful for people. And especially stressful if you want to if your happiness is dependent upon that success continuing, that definitely will be stressful. There will be worries about what will happen if I don't keep succeeding. We just can relax with the successes. Relax with the successes and roll with the failures. And sometimes we might notice that we succeed with that, and then we can, go like, oh, that's interesting. I did better. I did better with that than I would have maybe a year ago, or than I would have 5 years ago. I think that's very lovely when we notice unexpectedly that we navigated something, a success or a failure, that we navigated it better than we would have some time ago. It's a wonderful confirmation of practice, that practice works. Contemplating the teachings works. It's a wonderful thing when we get these little moments. And they're also very useful moments when we notice that we don't navigate them so well. They're also very beneficial moments. Something didn't go right and we got frustrated and it really ruined the rest of our day. Maybe it kept us awake all night. It's a great opportunity when that happens. Oh my goodness, I am kind of dependent at the moment. My emotional state seems to be dependent on these things that are actually not dependable. I am wanting my mental stability to depend on undependable things. That's probably not very wise. Can I find a way to calm my system while this failure is happening? And often the thing to do is just so simple. What we do in our daily Zazen is just return to the breath. Because things like success and failure, because they are more complex concepts, they tend to generate a lot of complex thinking. So while we're caught in a lot of that thinking, we can just go, just breathe. Pay attention to our breathing. Listen to the sounds. We might also contemplate that the question, who is it that succeeded? Who is it that failed? Who am I that is concerned about this success? Who am I that is concerned about this failure? What am I actually made of? I'm actually made of everything other than myself. I'm actually made of all the elements, carbon and oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen and so on. And I'm made of all the gifts given to me by everybody else. All of these other things have made it possible for this particular constellation to be here. So I'm made of the whole universe. If we can contemplate that, then successes and failures, we don't take them so personally. It's not so much my success or my failure. It's just this thing that we have labeled success and failure. It's not nothing, but it's a concept. It's not an actual thing. It's not nothing, but it's not a thing at the same time. I think that's particularly beneficial with successes, to really contemplate that any success that appears to be mine is actually everybody else's success, not mine. I'm only made of everything other than myself. And we can even apply that too to failure. When we don't do well at something, things don't go right. Just remembering that we're made of non-self elements and our capacities are determined by all the other things that came before this moment. And so if we didn't do well at something, it's because we didn't have the capacity to do better in that moment. The capacity wasn't there. And in the very bigger picture, that's not our fault. It's actually just the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's just the result of causes and conditions. To kind of get hooked in self-criticism is a kind of form of ego attachment, to be caught in self-criticism. Who is it that we're criticizing? On a subtle level, if we criticize ourselves, we're criticizing the universe. We're criticizing everything when we criticize ourselves in a certain kind of way. In another kind of way, it's good to hold ourselves responsible, because that's how we develop an ethical outlook. So we're always walking, we're always walking this line. The image I often use, and I've mentioned before, is like walking along a ridge. We don't want to slide down one side or the other too far. Just more or less keep a steady footfall along the ridge line. Form an emptiness. Let's walk down that ridge. So failure has arisen in me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. We can each find our own sentence like that, or our own version. That's the translation in the sutta here. But things are subject to change. Even that's just enough. Something goes well, it's subject to change. Something goes badly, it's subject to change. And then the last couplet are praise and blame, or fame and disgrace. I think I kind of like fame and disgrace because they're such strong sounding. They're so strong. But praise and blame. It's nice to receive praise. And it's quite skillful to receive praise in a way that doesn't add to self-identification. We can receive praise in a gentle, skillful way, because when someone offers us praise, we don't want to knock that praise back and go like, oh, no. Because someone's offering us praise, so we should receive it. But we can receive it gently. We can just gracefully say, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And just then let it kind of drift by like a breeze. We can also let praise, when we receive it, be kind of inform us about how we're doing. Like, okay, that sounds like what I did went well. That's a good thing. Not so much for self kind of constructing, but because we've taken these bodhisattva vows to want to be of benefit. So if somebody praises us, it might be because they do feel that what we've said or done has been beneficial. So that's good information. So we can take praise as just an instruction to check out, how we're doing. Don't have to make it any more than that. Okay, then I think I must have done that quite well. Like when my grandchildren say, "We love you, Nana." I think, okay, I'm doing pretty well. Wasn't so sure. I was kind of cross earlier on, but oh no, they seem to love me. I'm doing all right. And mostly I've just been speaking about the sort of receiving side of these 8 winds, but it's interesting to think about the praise that we give. There's times when praise is really appropriate, especially with children, "Oh, that's so great, you're so amazing." Children need and love that kind of praise, but adults like a little bit of it too. So it's nice to give it to adults a little bit as well. But there is a little place where sometimes it's a bit unnecessary. Because when a person is steady enough in who they are, they don't really need to receive praise. I was thinking about this because I was talking with someone about this just, I think, yesterday, that with my teacher, I don't think I actually gave him praise, hardly ever. And I don't think he really gave me praise either. We didn't really compliment each other. But our actions obviously showed that we had great respect for each other. I had great respect for him. And I think he had at least some. I'm not sure how much, but I think some degree. I think he must have for me. So sometimes giving praise is actually not always the best thing to do. So we have to judge that for ourselves. When is praise a good idea and when is it unnecessary? Or how to give it sort of, we can give praise gently as well as receive it gently. It's very easy for us to want to be praised. It really strengthens a sense of who we are, which of course is good in some situations. People need to like themselves. But in other situations, it's a little bit tricky. So we want to make sure we're not actually giving praise too much in some situations. It might not be beneficial. Blame, I think, is one of the most wonderful things to work with when we're blamed. It's fantastic. As painful as it is, it's a fantastic opportunity when we're blamed for something that we didn't do, or we're misunderstood. And we did something, but it's been misunderstood and taken as being, maybe it's misunderstood as intended to be harmful when it wasn't intended to be harmful. It's a really good opportunity because in those moments when we get blamed, the sense of ourself tends to get very solid. Might even be for just a minute or two, but our sense of who I am becomes very loud when we're blamed for something. And we can just breathe in that moment of being blamed. First of all, important to check from an ethical point of view whether the blame is completely warranted. Maybe we did do something harmful, in which case we should really take that on board. But sometimes it's just misunderstandings. and we're blamed for something that we didn't say or do or didn't intend in that particular way. And all of these things, praise and blame and success and failure, often they come very uninvited. They just come suddenly without any warning. So they're very good moments to notice our practice. Really good moments for noticing our practice. And hopefully more often they start to be moments of confirming that practice works. And if they're not moments that confirm it, they're opportunities for us to deepen our practice in that moment, so that at another point in time, we'll do better and it will confirm that practice is very beneficial. So I think what Zazen offers us is the capacity to notice these things when they happen, because often they're kind of little and they come and go quite fast across our day. And sometimes we don't even have much time to register them. We just react, and then the next thing has happened and we've moved on. So our Zazen helps us actually notice, consciously notice, that interaction just happened. This is how I responded. We might notice we were a little defensive, or we might notice that we weren't. And we can just, with regular Zazen, become a little better at our mind being slowing down enough that its capacity to observe what's going on is increased. So we're not just reacting to what's going on, we're observing our reactions to what's going on. Reacting to what's going on and observing how we react are quite different things. Very instructive to be able to observe. And particularly helpful to be able to slow down enough before having a reaction. So not actually just reacting, but having enough time to just take a breath, then responding. It's quite hard sometimes because these things do just arrive out of, uninvited. They arrive suddenly. But it's good when we can have something arrive and we can take a breath and then respond. So there they are, the 8 winds of the world. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, success and failure, praise and blame. We can practice working with them and being grateful for them. Life would not be interesting if we didn't have them all. Which is not, of course, to diminish that they can be painful and hard, of course, painful and hard. All right, so let's see. I'll do 3 bows. I think maybe we'll just all do 3 bows. We can all do 3 bows, and then we're going to have Kinhin. So those who want to stay, continue sitting with us. We've got another period of Zazen after 10 minutes of Kinhin. We'll chant our vows and then do 3 vows. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.